Between the 15th and 16th centuries, various armed conflicts were fought between the European kingdoms and the sultanates of the Middle East. Some may call these battles the last crusades, but really they're about money and power, like all wars. But all that blood wasn't spilt in vain, because hey, we got some pretty good trivia out of the deal. In the 1470s, the throne of Castile was vacant, and the kingdoms of Portugal and Aragon both had different ideas about who should put their keister on that chair. Needless to say, war broke out, and at first it seemed that there was a stalemate between the two powers until an interesting development occurred on the Portuguese side, when King Afonso decided he was bored of the war and his duties as royal sovereign, and decided to walk the earth. Although, you know, vacations always have to end, where did the Portuguese eventually find King Afonso? A, asleep in an inn in Jerusalem. B, sampling a brothel in Venice. C, performing as a jester in Granada. Luckily for Afonso, he had a very understanding son in Prince John, who stepped in as regent in his father's absence, and when Afonso reappeared, he allowed him to retain his title, even though the Portuguese lost the war. Ha ha ha! The Barbary Corsairs and the Knights of St. John were naval counterparts in the last Crusades. It would be safe to describe both factions as pirates. And like their successors in the West Indies 200 years later, legends arose amongst these seafaring men. Legends like the Corsair Dragut and the knight Sir Jean de la Valette. I hope they aren't rolling in their graves from my pronunciations. But nevertheless, a connection formed between these two men. What was it? A, they were lovers. B, Dragut saved Jean de la Valette's mom. C, they both were forced to serve each other as galley slaves. You see, back in those days, most ships were oared by a crew of galley slaves, and Dragut had Jean de la Valette at one point, rowing his boat. Yet Jean managed to escape this predicament and lived to hear Dragut say these words to him. "I mondanza de fortuna." I see a change of luck. Now, this occurred when Jean de la Valette captured Dragut at Sardinia. And the history may be a little bit shaky, but I believe Jean said to Dragut, "Here's an oar, Dragut. Now get a rowing. Revenge is a biatch." Saltpeter is an essential ingredient in gunpowder. Yet in the 16th century, you can only really find this in the Far East. And as you might have guessed, this produced quite the kerfuffle for the Western powers, like England, who wanted that sweet, sweet saltpeter, but didn't want to be dependent on some foreign power. So they thought, hey, let's make this stuff at home. And what was their curious solution to this problem? A, the saltpeter dance. B, collecting everybody's poop in London. C, forcing every guy named Peter to cry and collect their tears. The hope was that by dousing 5 acres of caca with some various chemicals, saltpeter crystals would just pop up. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're asking, saltpeter doesn't work like that. Don't mind the tractor. This is a working hobby farm, if you know what I mean, all right? Okay. Yeah, it's harvest time here in Minnesota. Yeah, you can hear the tractors going far and away.